Hello and welcome to our podcast panel AI debate. This comes at the end of a fantastic LifeIn AI here at Market Hall in Plymouth. We hope you've all been inspired by today and enjoyed the demos and everything that's been going on. We'd like to take a minute here to say a few words of thanks before we record the podcast. I hand over to our host, Paul, and our lovely panel. We would like to thank our headline partners, the Devon and Somerset Local Skills Improvement Plan, or LSIP as they like to be known, delivered by the Devon Chamber of Commerce and supported by Tomlinson Solutions Smart Working Revolution. Without both the financial and organisational support of the LSIP and Chamber, we simply would not have been able to put this event on. And so thank you with all our hearts. We'd also like to thank all of our sponsors and other partners who've been involved in the event today, because equally without their skills, technology, their knowledge, their experiences today would not have been such a great success. So we also like to thank City College Plymouth, Innovara, Devon County Council, Optics Solutions, Your Tech Future, Disruption Works. Again, without your support, it's unlikely today would have happened. And also thank you to market stallholders who were here to support the day, University of Plymouth, who put on so many incredible live demonstrations and workshops, and to all our other demonstrators, keynote speakers and workshop hosts. So thank you to all those that helped us successfully market LifeIn AI to businesses and the public, from the Chamber, Tech Southwest, Plymouth City Council, Skills Launchpad, Building Brands, Digital Plymouth, Bamboo Support Growth and Invest in Plymouth. So as you can see from the list of all those sponsored partners, today was just a really big community involvement. We loved it. So thank you in no small measure to Real Ideas and the incredible space here at Market Hall. Thanks in particular to Corinne, who has helped us much here, and Patrick, who has made the fantastic dome shows a real great memorable experience for everybody. And finally, we want to thank you to coming and supporting LifeIn AI. If you were here today, big thank you for coming along. Just to give you a heads up, we had over 300 people through our doors today, which was a really great success in our minds for a first event. So thank you to everyone that came along.
Okay, now on to our podcast panel. This is a discussion with 6 AI experts. Yes, you're experts. And innovators, disruptors, and they're all fans of AI. Each panelist lives and works in Plymouth, Devon and Cornwall, but they come from a cross-section of industry and society, with representatives here of education, business, tech, robotics, recruitment, creativity, and far more. You're looking at 6 amazing panelists here. The discussion today is quite simply AI. We'll take a look at our local region, of course, and at innovation and business solutions. However, the point of this panel is simply to spark some debate and see where we go with it. Some of us are terrified about AI. Some of us are really excited about AI. But most of us know that ChatGPT, and maybe we know a few other things, but we want to learn about something that is changing our lives right now and will do so in some incredible ways in the future. Our panelists undoubtedly know far more than, well, many of us about AI. So we're really, really pleased to have these 6 people here. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce our panel host, because we're really pleased to have the 7th person over here, Paul Philpott. Paul is a director at Devon Chamber of Commerce, and he's also managing director at Fresh Air Studios on the Barbican. With more than 30 years in media, he's a long-time follower of developments in AI, helped, or as he says, possibly hindered by being partnered to a software developer, so it's a constant topic of conversation. As the founder of Fresh Air Studios, a creative services business specialising in media production, Paul, who is particularly aware of the challenges and opportunities AI presents to the creative industries, is a seasoned host. He hosts several podcasts, most notably The Procurement Show, which has racked up over 300,000 listens and has been featured by Apple, where discussions around AI in business are obviously a recurring theme. He's always keen to encourage practical, grounded debate on emerging tech like AI. So please put your hands together and indeed welcome a practical, grounded debate on emerging tech like AI. Over to you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I thought we agreed not to mention the 30 years bit.
Well,
Yeah, okay. Now, I'd like to start actually by thanking Team Brand Biscuit Studio, in particular, Christina and Matt. Give them both a round of applause, because they're doing incredibly well. Stand up, turn around, take a bow, And don't they make a lovely couple? I must actually say as well.
Is that right?
They've worked incredibly hard. So, welcome to our podcast live panel discussion, where we'll be delving into the thoughts and exploring our concepts and opinions about what life in AI actually means. So, let's find out who we have on the panel. I'm going to hand over to, I'm going to call him Matt the roving microphone, and we're going to start with our panelist number one. Please, could you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you're from, and also why you have an opinion about AI.
Oh, that's an introduction, isn't it? Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Paul Fanshawe. I'm Executive of Business Intelligence, Growth and Skills at City College Plymouth. So I sit in the leadership at the college. My remit is to look after digital at the college in terms of new technology and also skills. So I'm very interested for ourselves about how we can introduce skills across the emerging generation, but also our existing older generations to reskill and to be able to take advantage of this technology. And also a big thing on digital equity, about how you can try and level a playing field through AI and make sure that most people get advantage of this amazing technology.
Contestant number two.
Hi, I'm Steve Tompkinson, Managing Director of Disruption Works. We are disruptive, but without the disruption, hopefully. But we specialise in AI solutions, automation. We've been focusing very much on voice bots, chat bots that do full end-to-end services, and we've got a range of sectors that we work with, and some kind of really exciting projects that we work on as well. So we've been doing that for now about 4 years. So it's really moved on significantly in that lifetime. But you know, the new stuff that's coming through, we've done a bit of the pain. So we've done some of that. We understand it, and we know what you should be doing now because we've lived through it.
And I've got a feeling you're a bit of a geek as well, aren't you? I can tell.
A little bit.
You can admit it. Who do we have next?
Hi, how do I follow that? I'm Lindsay Skinner. I am MD and tech recruiter at Your Tech Future. Following the theme, I have over 22 years in tech recruitment. So I started when it was just becoming a thing and people were talking about it. And I started the business with my partners 2 years ago to really highlight what the Southwest has in that future tech and AI space. So I'm really passionate about putting the Southwest on the map, showing that we do exist, that we do have that talent down here, and that there are those businesses that are looking at that innovation as well. So I am also a bit geeky. I'm tech first, I code. I'm massively into that AI space, obviously. So I have a bit of a dual role in that, yes, I am a recruiter, but I also do get involved in the tech as well. So
Excellent. Very well done for defending the talent here in the Southwest as well. And the award for the best lanyard goes to...
Why, thank you. My name's Jake Shaw-Sutton. I'm the lecturer in applied robotics at the University of Plymouth and also director of the robotic R&D company Robotrix, based down just outside Par in Cornwall. And over the past, I sadly cannot say 20 or 30 years, but over the past 10 years, I've been involved heavily in building the hardware for robots, both from things such as Pepper and quadrupeds and humanoids and tracked robots, and also the software development that's gone on inside of that. So the human-robot interaction, speech recognition, image recognition, creating all of these, by today's standards, very antiquated models to try and do recognition, to try and make contextual awareness, all of which is a bit out of the window and been replaced because AI has just evolved and transformers and all. I'm sure we'll get on to that a bit later, but yes, Southwest, we can build a lot of things down here and people don't realize that.
We certainly can. And who do we have next?
Good evening. I'm Josh from Smart Working Revolution. We are a leadership development company, so very much human first and human focused. And so our role is really bringing human intelligence to AI. We've developed a little gizmo, little tool called My Future of Work that looks at any job in any industry and unpicks the roles and responsibilities, and then looks at how AI can support that role in the future, and to help leaders then make better, more informed decisions about their AI journey, rather than what I call the cul-de-sacs of having a go with a shiny tool, then realizing it's rubbish, and then coming back out again and starting from scratch. So
Fantastic.
move into strategic AI rather than tinkering.
Excellent. And who's on the end?
Yeah, my name's Sam Halfyard. I'm the co-founder of Innovara. What we do is we actually come into your companies where AI can make the biggest impact first, and we slowly move down that line. So eventually you have tailored solutions and tailored plans to your business, not necessarily one that captures all in your industry.
Fantastic. And you might not notice, but Sam actually has 60 years experience in all things technology. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pose some questions, and I think it's like first person to the microphone almost. Raise your hand if you want to answer and go first. Interestingly, because these things tend to stay on the internet and they're available for a long time, and the world of AI has progressed at blazingly fast speed, I'm actually going to add the date to some of these questions. So the first question is, in your opinion, what impact is AI having on us all right now in 2025?
I think generally there is an adaptation to using AI, a bit like we have with the internet. So people are expecting answers immediately. There's a lack of patience. There's a lack of maybe a lack of ability at this time to wait for an answer. They expect an answer now. They expect an immediacy of service. Certainly in terms of, we're in the education sector, and the education sector, people want answers now. So in the classroom, if you're asking your lecturer something now, you expect the lecturer to be able to answer like that, but they're not an AI program. They're not somebody that can actually go and drag information straight from the internet and all the resource, the data source they have and can pull in from. So it's kind of, the impact, I think, is changing the nature of how we react with probably individuals and the services that we expect across society. And the interesting thing there is that not all services should react the same and should adapt the same. But I think this becomes some consistency of expectation, and that I think is a challenge, I think, as we go forward. On the positive side, I think from an educational point of view, it's opening up doors. So you've now got the ability, whoever you are, to learn about things rather than necessarily having to wait for an educational specialist to give you an answer. You can actually interface and ask for questions, get more of an interesting answer that engages with you and personalizes the response. So you can start to engage with some trickier concepts. So it's almost like a twofold kind of thing. You've got the first point about that difficult nature of the immediacy of response and how you as a human kind of respond to that expectation of your audience and you're the person you're working with. But also I think for certainly members of society that maybe do not have access to personal tutors, or maybe got access to certain of the resources, to like family resources that know things. If you're in a family where you haven't got somebody who went to university or has done certain education levels and can't answer those questions, I think AI is changing society by maybe opening those avenues for people to engage with things that they maybe couldn't have before. So there's probably two different things there. I think, certainly from the educational point of view, that I think are interesting.
Paul, you mentioned user impatience. Has that not always been the case since we were able to Google things? You know, you Google and you get answers quicker. Why are we noticing it particularly now?
I think it's the expectation of more nuanced responses. You can absolutely, since like, you know, we're going to Google some things, use a pretty poor. I was the Ask Jeeves generation. Sorry, kind of.
Yeah.
By the early 1990s.
Those secrets, what I
Yeah,
yeah.
if you know the Ask Jeeves stuff. So, you know, realistically, those days when you could go and start to ask the questions, and you get a response about 5 minutes in those days, but you still get a response quite quickly. I think these days you're getting stuff that's more nuanced, more specific, and is adapted to the question you're asking. So you're getting more real answers in inverted commas. So I think it means that people are trusting that response more. It feels more real, and they're more likely to go, "Thank you for the answer," rather than going, "Well, that's a good starting point.
Yes. Yeah.
Where do I go next?" This is the answer. Thank you very much. And they're expecting that maybe solidity of an answer.
A few moments ago, Josh, you raised your hand. You obviously want to come in on that. Do you agree or do you wish to challenge this?
I think ultimately I agree, and the questions around how can it help people right now today, if not actually last week, last year. For us, we're more knowledge-based economy, so the operators rather than high-end tech. So what we're finding is that you end the things like the tyranny of the blank page, and you dial up efficiency and productivity, and the ability to having lots of conversations today at this event where what people are really interested in doing is offloading all of the admin, I won't swear, the admin nonsense that they have to do that they don't enjoy, don't like, and not what they're built for. And then they can dial up the human skills and the human interactions that they have. And from a business context, they can make more sales potentially. They can interact with more customers. They can do more market research, do lots of other things that isn't plumbing numbers into spreadsheets, for instance. So that efficiency, productivity, and tyranny of blank page.
Lindsay, you're nodding. I can imagine that with particular reference to finding talent that's able to utilize this technology. This year's looking very different for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that really resonates with me, obviously, in my market. And I think it's fair to say we're in a learning phase with AI, and everyone is in a different stage of that learning. And I think it's really important that, everybody recognizes that we are not all at the same place. And I think we are currently in a situation where, even looking at today and the people that walked through the door, there were those that had probably never looked at AI but wanted to know what it's about. And there were those that came in going, actually, I know an awful lot about it, and I want to share that knowledge with other knowledge leaders in that field. So I think we're on a journey of learning with it. And certainly from the recruitment space and the talent space, absolutely, we're finding that clients are coming to us and businesses are coming to us and saying, okay, what areas of that role could I use automation for and use AI for in order to make that role a little bit more involved, a little bit more exciting, a little bit more sort of challenging and diverse for that talent that we're looking for. We're taking away those more mundane tasks by using that automation and AI. So I think there's a lot of positive. There's also a lot of challenge with that. There's a lot of fear. And obviously we would be wrong not to touch on that. And there is a lot of fear in the market about how will this affect us further down the line. But yeah, I mean, we could sit on either side of that fence, but I think it's important to recognise it.
So taking on board what you said about knowing and understanding the talent requirements that we have in this current sphere, and with what you say about human first interactions, and with what Paul has said about the fact that a lot of users are very impatient to utilize this technology. When we look forward to 2025, are we looking at companies that are perhaps wanting to deploy this technology with impatience? They're not sitting back and figuring out, is this the right time for me as an organization? Is this the right time for me to utilize this tech? And they're kind of like running before they can walk within the AI marketplace. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, all right. So I did a workshop earlier today, and it was all about having that strategy in place. And a lot of what you're talking about, as far as people now starting to look at AI and learning AI and wanted to know more about it, is super important when you're a business, because what we've done a lot, and one of the problems with the running before you can walk piece, is that a lot of the execs are top down, applying an AI solution to something that the employees know nothing about. They're not even trained on it, so they don't know how to manage it or take it further or feed back into it or any of those things. There was a survey done recently by Writer AI, one of these big agentic platforms, and they were saying there was a huge dichotomy between what success looked like for executives. So 73% of the executives were going, yeah, we've had a great time with AI, it worked perfectly. 33% of the employees thought the same. So there was a huge gap between that, a massive gap. And also, very interestingly, the survey pointed out that something like 42% of Gen Zs and millennials were actively sabotaging AI initiatives in the business. Now, that means they're not engaged. They haven't been asked. They haven't been either or informed or brought into the loop on what happens next. And that's part of the whole education piece, getting the right people in the room, but also upskilling people to understand what this is. And that's a huge a job that business now has to do, and has to work on that whole process before they can start using all the tools. That you can try stuff, you can do some small silos, and that's part of the next stage. That's part of kind of seeing what's relevant to your business. But the understanding bit is the first stage. You know, you have to understand, your business has to understand, and your people in the business have to understand what happens next.
Thank you. We'll forget all this. I'm still trying to figure out what a Gen Z is. Let's bring in Jake. Jake, you'd like to add to this conversation?
Yep. One of the things that I think is quite interesting, especially with how a lot of people treat or respond and think about AI, is it's something new. We're treating this as this new thing that's come in, when in reality, it's been around for a long time. It's just the ability for anyone to engage with these tools has never been easier.
Do you remember the phrase neural networks?
Oh, yeah.
So last season.
Well, if we think back, any time there's been a progressive shift in technology, there's been a couple of different ways that it's played out. You could look back to the dot-com bubble, the huge demand. Initially when the internet came around, it was just a means for sharing documents between universities. And then suddenly it was pitched as this idea for communication between people. And a lot of people thought, why do we need that? We've got phones. We'll stick with phones. We'll just talk to people. Ultimately, as I think we can all agree, the internet has pretty much taken over as the means of communications on that. And part of the barrier for using that back then was having that knowledge of dial-ups, modems, communications. Being able to use the technology required a certain amount of technological understanding, whereas where AI has come about, and the reason why it's exploded in growth, is because that barrier to entry is nothing. You can type the most simplest nonsense and actually get something that either answers, reaffirms, or extends that. So from a learning point of view, if you go into it with an open mindset and you're trying to learn and understand what these models can actually generate, they can give you very powerful information, but the same can kind of happen the other way. And a lot of it still at this point in time, in 2025, a lot of people aren't convinced because they've not had that experience. They've not had the exposure. But the people that have had that exposure, that have had that education or learning, seeing the evolution of even just GPT going from 3 to 3.5 and 4 and all the way forward, seeing how progressive, how much more powerful they're becoming, they are the people that are embedding this and seeing it as a future solution. So if you look at businesses, CEOs, they're always, how can you make more money? How can you save money? Okay, one solution, AI. Let's fire everyone and get a load of AI voice assistants now to settle with everyone on phone lines. And in theory, that might work. But there's a lot of catch up. There's a lot of human understanding of how the tools work that needs to be imbued into people first for it to become a really practical tool.
You did a great snapshot then of the history of tech, but you forgot to mention the impact of Snapchat. Now, let's ask our next question, and we're going to put Sam on the spot to go with this first, all right? So we can bring you in on the conversation. Things are happening so quickly with regards to AI. We've spoken about 2025 ahead. What would you say are the major misconceptions surrounding AI in 2025? Misconceptions.
Yeah, so I've actually got a lot of stick about this one before, regarding developers, especially your traditional developers, your coders. I have the phrase, well, it's not mine, I've stolen it. In the next 5 years, the only coding language will be the English one. And I'm sure we've all seen the phrase vibe coding, vibe marketing. And it is a real thing. And I genuinely think in 5 years that will be the thing. So the misconception.
So using natural language.
Exactly. Saying, I like the look of this landing page. I want one, but in this color and with unicorns flying across it. And it'll do it. It'll do it in 30 seconds. Is that technology where it should be right here, right now, today? No. But look, 2 years ago, That's when ChatGPT 3 came out. We were absolutely amazed. That was 2 years ago. Zoom out. Where do you think this will be in 5 years realistically? That is a realistic viewpoint, in my opinion. So the misconception that I see is I don't have time to have 3 years experience, 5 years experience in coding. You don't need to know that anymore. Tools, low code, no code, vibe coding, these phrases are all coming out for a reason. You don't need that anymore. You just need 30 minutes a day, and you just need to be curious. You just need to go, I want to learn that. You just want to be comfortable with failing and learning some more, getting a bit better. That's all you need.
And I still think that what was that phrase? Object oriented programming or something? Do you remember drag and drop? Yeah, that's right. I'm drag and drop. Does anybody like to add to that with regards? Yes, go ahead.
Especially on the programming point of view, because a lot of to be safe and reliable from a robotic and real hardware point of view, the way that we program is embedded. It's going to be in C. It's going to be, if it's doing really well, then it's an FPGA or machine code, and. From a computer science point of view, the language that has taken over, that's become far more popular in the past 10 years, is Python and more abstracted languages where you are ultimately programming more in English. So the next progression is definitely just going an AI topper onto that of describing what you want to happen. The thing that people will always argue against that at this moment in time is, well, an AI can't keep the context. My code is too complicated. There's too much. It can't understand it all. That's a sign that you've done your code not very efficiently.
Yeah.
And you could improve that. And you know what? It probably could improve that. And it could add comments and make it readable for other people to modify and edit in the future. It's definitely the way things are going.
Embedded, my word. It's a while since I've had that experience. Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about developers and coding because I do myself out of a job, obviously. So I'm not going to add to that.
You could argue we've already all been done out of a job.
Yeah, it goes against everything I say. But just picking up on something Sam said as well, I think on the original question of misconceptions, the misconception is very much that AI is ChatGPT. You know, ChatGPT came out and it's
That's a really, really good point. This is where marketing's taken the lead, so to speak.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and picking up on what you said about it has been around for a long time. And one of my business partners brings out a book that he had in university in the early 90s, which was all about AI. So, you know, it has been around for years. But I guess my point is that ChatGPT is not AI. It is a form of AI, 100%. And ChatGPT has put AI on the map more recently, and it's why we are starting to hear it more widely used and talked about. But it is a misconception that AI is ChatGPT. It's much broader than that. There's lots of other areas of AI that are not those generative models and ChatGPT, for example.
I saw two twitches. I'll come back to you, Josh. I'm just going to go to Paul very quickly.
Just building what Sam was saying, so the no-code development, we've got a practical example. So as a college, we've had non-developers developing apps to support our business processes. So literally spinning up an app using Google because it's already built into the Google kind of license. So realistically, using their app sheets, pulling it down, drafting up a kind of an app, and then using it practically in a college with AI in the background to analyze all the results and give us feedback, to develop training programs. No code is involved at all. And that was built and released in 5 weeks. And I think that kind of is exactly right. So that kind of thought that you need to be a coder or you need to be a specialist to really, really use some of these amazing tools. Actually, I think what's happening, exactly what you're saying, we're already at that level now. It's opening up really technical things to non-technical people, and businesses can start to leverage it really quickly and immediately. It's quite useful.
Okay, but you work in education, so surely the relaxing of the amount of training that's needed to apply these skills is a bit of a concern. So how do you approach doing this in the right way and still needing to learn about it?
Yeah, because I think essentially you want technical people. So fundamentally, I mean, there'll be people to my left who'll be able to say, no, we won't need that. My view is you probably in the short term still need people to test. You'll still need fundamental in the short term, people to test stuff and cast that human eye over in the short term to make sure that essentially what is being done is something we'd want necessarily to happen. I'm sure even the layer of testing at some point will be abstracted, it'll be out the door, and you'll have AI testing AI code, it'll just go in that lovely kind of circle where they do themselves. At the minute, though, I think having that understanding of what you're doing, being able to develop, being able the building blocks to build on and take you further is probably one where to go. You need, I think, in some ways, to have that that constant understanding of where you're building from. And I think at the minute that's still a useful skill. I still think that where some of our younger people can still build from. But the thing is to make sure that they don't think that's the destination. I think that's a starting point to learn your skills, but you need to be then looking further about where the industry is going, and people alongside me here about where you're taking it. I'm sure they've all got those practical skills. They've started there, but that's not where you've stopped. You've gone beyond that. And I think that's where we have to go with the young people and the adults who are retraining as well.
Let's bring the mic back down to Josh so that he can come in. But I've got to say that concept, that thought of a cyclic, self-perpetuating thing that programs and improves itself is one thing that I definitely am quite scared about. Josh.
Just the conversation there, but my AI summary brain to shortcut stuff. There's a couple of phrases, particularly people worried about AI, that AI won't steal your job, it'll steal the tasks from your job, some of the tasks from your job. And the other one is AI won't steal your job. People who can use AI will steal your job.
Okay. Sam, do you want to come in quickly and then we'll go to Steve?
Yeah, no worries. I thought it'd be good to add as well that I come from that low code, no code space and vibe coding. 3 years ago, I was doing a law degree, making coffee, and then I started learning about, this is pretty cool. And then
so everyone had to sign a contract for a coffee.
Yeah, no, but we spun up our first MVP of our first business on a no-code platform in 5 weeks, and we were profitable within a year. And stuff like that's absolutely mind-blowing. That 3 years ago, I was doing law, making coffee, and now I'm making enterprise-level AI automation, AI agents, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. So I just want to kind of make it clear to everyone out there, you do not need any more that foundational degree. It does help, but you don't need that anymore to kind of do what you want to do.
But one thing you do need, which you clearly do have, is entrepreneurial spirit to apply all this.
Yeah, so that comes down to obviously different things, but you've got to be consistent and you've just got to be comfortable with failing. You're not going to wake up one day. The difficulty in actually learning these tools isn't different from learning to code. You've just got a lot more resources to help you. You can't just sit at a computer and in 30 minutes spin up this amazing application for many reasons that I won't go into, mainly security. But you start getting these problems, you still need to go, okay, that doesn't work. Why? Learn.
Yes.
Go again.
Yes.
That's it.
We'll pass the mic down to Steve. The irony of this is actually this concept of trying, failing, not being scared to fail, learn from your mistakes is actually how AI systems work, how they learn. But Steve, is there something you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, it's interesting because the Samsung example is in isolation, and it's something you've created for yourself, and they're great, and all this stuff is available, like you said, to be entrepreneurial and do those things. We unfortunately have to deal with a lot of legacy mess. So the legacy mess is
that a technical term?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
The legacy is outrageous, and the problem is we're talking about big systems that big businesses rely on, and they are finding this really difficult to come out of. So the skills that we have, I'm getting on, and there's a few old hands knocking about.
These are Go Faster Stripes, this isn't grey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, wisdom.
So if we don't have any new blood coming through, then we're going to have real problems,
Yes.
So I've taken legacy systems off people who are now 80 that we're still managing because nobody else knew how to do them, and brought them back into something that was more code based or whatever it was. But a recent article came out about the drive now to take government into AI and have all the efficiencies and all that type of stuff. 33% of the government systems at this moment in time are marked as legacy. So a third. Now, that is untenable when you're then trying to do something innovative and do something else. So this is all about coming back to, well, what have you already got? Where is it fit for purpose? Does it work? And all that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, most businesses have some horrible legacies, and that there is going to be somebody needs to deal with that. And if you have no skills in a code environment, then you're going to really struggle, because if you can't do Python, C, or whatever it is, you're really going to struggle. If you don't understand SQL, you're really going to struggle. If you don't know how cloud infrastructure works and how to then take a co-located server into the cloud and everything and all the securities that go alongside it, you're going to be really in trouble.
Very well said. Yeah.
So we do still need the skills.
Long live Windows NT. That's what I say. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was stable. Windows NT was stable.
Windows 95.
Yeah. I'm just going to move on very quickly to our next question, because this brings the conversation to a local context. And obviously, you can bring the previous thought points into reference if you wish to as well, because after all, this is a Plymouth, Devon and Cornwall event. So outside of your business or organization, how would you say our region is innovating in terms of AI? And are we all doing what we can in our region to work with AI sensibly, and what challenges do we face with its deployment? You've got the microphone. You can go first.
Okay.
You grabbed it.
Well, I was just going to add one final thing in terms of like legacy
Please do.
companies and a lot of that technology. How many companies are still running steam engines, or were they forced to change because of new, efficient, better solutions? At some point, everything does have to continue to evolve. And I know from the university context, I mean, we've got some equipment that still has floppy disks in there.
Oh, yes.
We've had to eventually
What
rip
size?
those out. We've had to replace those with USB. Ooh, state of the art.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where evolution, change needs to keep coming, and there needs to be support to help bring that into businesses. And in terms of the Southwest, this region as a whole, I would say it's also very similar to the Far East, not the Far East of the UK, not necessarily the Far East of the... I was thinking Norfolk and Suffolk, another farming area.
Yeah.
So as a region, a lot of people will look to this and think farming, nice countryside, oh, there's landscapes and that,
Yes.
not necessarily state-of-the-art technology. As someone that set up a robotics company in an old agricultural barn, I can safely say, as long as there's space, you can build things with new technology, with new tools, rapid prototyping. Anyone can effectively build anything that you can think of in your own landscape. In terms of AI, that's even simpler. If anyone's got a computer in a bedroom, well, they can become a state-of-the-art developer.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the biggest disconnect is still that awareness, especially down in the Southwest here, when people aren't necessarily connected to the internet or even have mobile phone signal. They might know what's happening in the village or in the market, but they might not have any idea what Perplexity or Grok or ChatGPT is doing from day to day. And I think if we really want to push and support people in the area, it's raising awareness and making sure the connectivity's there so people can actually embed that into their thought process.
Jake there reminiscing about the 8-inch floppy. Paul, let's bring you in, because you obviously have, you've got your finger on the pulse with regards to what's happening in the region. So what are your thoughts?
I think we have to remember that we've got the largest manufacturing base in the south here. You know, it's a huge kind of employer, an industry 4.0, and the automation, the machine learning elements of that are fully embedded within the manufacturing sector. And if you speak to some of the business leaders we've got down here, they're all talking about how they're going to improve the productivity using AI and using machine learning on their manufacturing kind of base. So I think certainly that area. And I know from conversations with that sector, they're all very much fully engaged in about how they can bring forward the benefits they need to give them the productivity benefits they have to have. I think outside of that, we've obviously got a massive hospital, and the government is driving forward the concept of use of AI across the public sector. Definitely within the health sector, it's a priority. And unfortunately, they have a lot of legacy software. They've got a lot of legacy equipment, but definitely in the health sector, there's a focus on how they can adopt it, whether they can. How they're going to get there is a different conversation. But I would say at the minute, Paul, there's definitely a lot of conversation where those are two massive sectors. The engineering sector, the manufacturing sector, the health sector, some of the biggest employers, the education sector, the second biggest employer, I think, in the city at the minute. The education sector is heavily engaged about how you can utilize AI, certainly about productivity of the staff, especially in terms where it's quite hard to get hold of technical staff to be able to deliver stuff. So I think, because I kind of deal with lots of people across the region, I'm finding lots of conversation, whether it's practically getting down to the ground, whether you're actually seeing it actually taking shape in terms of people within the workforce seeing the benefits of it. I'm not sure we're there yet. I think what you can say is that across the sector, it is something I'm always hearing and always having conversations about. So I think you're quite right. We are geographically kind of distant, but that in some ways can drive innovation. I always say the digital aspect, the being so geographical isolated, actually means that the digital aspect breaks down those barriers even more. So you get kind of that spirit, maybe that innovation piece of people spinning things up in a bedroom or a barn, I think actually is driven by that geographical isolation. So I think we've got quite a spirit at the minute, Paul, of people wanting to do it. I think it's very much at the forefront, but I do think adoption, there's still maybe a barrier to people understanding how they can adopt it and how maybe you can cascade it sensitively through your business so you're not going to lose talent or destabilize yourself during the integration of it. I think there's maybe a lack of knowledge of how to adopt it.
Actually, that's quite an interesting point, because you've segued us onto our next question, which is about workflows and workforce, and how you can plan your future work format and team format with regards to AI. So the next question is, how can businesses get support for AI integration in Devon and Cornwall? I'm going to put Lindsay on the spot there, if I may, because when it comes to implementing a workforce and implementing technology, that's your bag.
Yeah, I mean, I think just carrying on from that point, which will draw on to your question, but I think it's worth noting as well that AI is not location specific. So we're actually in a really great situation here, because we can spin something up in AI wherever we are based. And that's the great thing about this technology. There are some fantastic innovation businesses that are popping up. Sam's talked about their business. That's I know you've obviously got the new business, and they've spun something up which is seriously impressive and can be used across the UK, can be used worldwide. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things down here that give us benefits, is the first thing I wanted to carry on from that. In terms of the workforce, again, there is a benefit on the location front, because what we are finding is that there is a lot of talent that is staying in Southwest now, because there are a lot of businesses that are starting to pop up. You mentioned the sort of the NHS, the big companies, but again, worth mentioning, there are some great new startups, some SMEs that are really spinning things up very quickly in a very, very forward-thinking way with that tech. And so from a workforce perspective, there's some great talent to draw on. 9 times out of 10, they don't have to be in London anymore, because the workforce down here can work for those bigger businesses. They can also work for those innovative businesses in the Southwest and take it further afield. So from a workforce perspective, I think we are in a really great situation here, that we are harvesting some fantastic talent, out of those universities, the colleges. And as Sam touched on, you do not need to be a technical expert. So that's a great thing, because people who are inquisitive can work with those technologies, can get into those fields. So I think we're in a really unique and positive space here in the Southwest, that there's some exceptional talent down here. It's just uncovering it, and it's not because of the nature of the businesses, and they're not necessarily just dealing with other Southwest businesses. We don't necessarily know about all the talent down here unless you're in that field. So I think it's worth noting that's a really important point.
Very well said. Yes. In a few moments' time, we're going to be asking for some questions from our audience, and I've given you the heads up. So that you can ask ChatGPT for any questions if you can't think of any. Is there anybody who'd like to add to this conversation so far? Yes. Here we go.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. So about what can businesses locally do and how will they understand their journey, and where we're at is supporting leaders, call them smart leaders, but leaders in kind of the runway of AI. So rather than coming in at high end, it's how will you use it day to day and grow business using AI. And so the tool that I spoke about looks at roles and responsibilities. So the example, we work with an accountant. They have a lot of people at AAT level 2, so kind of basic accountancy qualification. But what the tool was showing them is that, well, actually AI can now do all of that bit. Well, it can do it now, but certainly in the next couple of years, you really won't need people doing the level 2 quality of work. Whereas what you do need, will need, is the level 3. So now they are taking steps to grow all of the people to become level 3 rather than sacking them all. Let's develop the business. Let's redeploy. Let's grow. Dialing up those human skills so that the next phase of their development will be people at level 3 who are much better at customer service, much better at account management. So they'll end up being able to do more work with the same amount of people.
Excellent. And I do like it when you say dial up the human skills. Sam, I know you wanted to come in earlier because you kind of waved your hand at me. You could have thrown something at me. That's fine. I wouldn't have minded. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I'm not in a lot of the circles that these conversations are taking place in. So from my perspective, I'm not 100% sure what's going on in this region. And that's either for two reasons. One, nothing's happening. Or two, no one's shouting loud enough about it. I think no one's shouting loud enough about it.
I think as a region, we're not very good at speaking up for what we do, if I may say so. And everyone's nodding, so I'm not talking out of place there, thankfully.
I don't know if I necessarily blame that on the region instead of the UK as a whole, not to get political, but the bureaucracy around AI, especially in the EU, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
We see updates from OpenAI in America. 6 months later, we get them, and it's like, oh, great, thank you. The next thing's out.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well we see in our company is technical debt, which is basically a chunk of time that a company needs to catch up to where they are today.
Right. Yes.
That is pretty much the number one issue when companies come to talk to us. We look at you and go, we need to be having this conversation in 18 months time. And in 18 months time, AI's already developed this much, because obviously AI runs really well off your data and your workflows. If I can't even get an API into your workflow right now, how is AI going to do it? And how can we even use these tools? We call it magpie syndrome. You've seen this lovely shiny thing and go, give that to me, I want it.
Yeah.
I can't even use technology from 20 years ago in your company. We're at this stage. So bureaucracy, technical debt.
Yeah, and with the let's not talk about policy keeping up with time. Now we've got 10 minutes to go, so let's bring some questions in from the audience. Matt and his microphone Matt is that's your new name there. Is going to hand the microphone around. If you are going to present a question, please can you give us your name and tell us where you're from, and then go ahead with the question. So who do we have? Hands up, please.
Otherwise, I'm going to pick on you. Okay,
so,
brilliant.
I'll kick it off. Ian Stewart up at the University of Plymouth, and that's my question. Universities, do we need them? Can we shortcut them? The landscape that you're describing is something so fast, the pace of change is so fast in a 3-year degree, I wonder, and your experience is quite interesting as well. I mean, what is the role of a university or a higher education place in something so fast?
Okay, let's get the question back to our panelists. Thank you for making half our panelists redundant. That's okay. And no, but in all seriousness,
thank you.
There's a serious context there about the impact of this on education, isn't there?
It is. I think it's a really interesting conversation about what's the relation between a lecturer, a teacher, and the students. I think going forward, if a student get the information, learn things quicker from an AI kind of interaction or from some other source, what's the role? I think you probably get two things. One, we talked earlier on about the ability for us to have emotional intelligence and be able to translate stuff. So I think the role of a lecturer, the role of a teacher is very much that they've got the knowledge. They won't know everything, but they're able to have the emotional intelligence to translate and provide a pathway to a learner who might not always get it first time to get those concepts. So I think it's the beauty of this is probably saying about the importance of the lecturer is the importance of being the human that is able to interact with another person to get the concepts across. We know people don't always get it first time. You know, I've studied online. Sometimes that can be really challenging. If you get stuck and you've got to solve it yourself, it can be good, but it can also be really, really challenging. So there's the first bit about that. The second piece, I think, is it's a facilitator. The second bit we might well see, instead of the lecturer being stood at the front of the class, leading the activity, they might step away so the students are leading the activity together, and you might see a lecturer become more of a facilitator. So they're using their experience to help the students collaboratively get to their goal. So there definitely might be a change in what happens in the classroom. That relationship might change, and I think it's going to be forced to change somewhat, I think. And in some ways, the lecturer might be learning with the students, but they're able to actually interpret what they're seeing probably quicker than the students will. So they'll be helping people get to the end point with their knowledge and experience. I think they're just as valuable. I think they're just as valuable because you get to the right destination rather than maybe misinterpreting what you're seeing. So that'd be my view, just a change maybe in that relationship, but no devaluing of the experience, because I think actually they become more important in their human skills, really.
I know Lindsay wants to come in. If we hand it down, emotional intelligence. There's another phrase that didn't exist about 2 years ago. We should be doing buzzword bingo. That's what we should be playing. Yeah, Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I concur with everything you say, but I am going to say something controversial, which will probably divide the audience and might get me removed. But, you know, I think there is absolutely a role for universities and degrees, but I think the education sector needs to speed up, because I think it's fair to say the curriculums are very quickly becoming outdated. And unfortunately, and that's not the fault of the universities, that is the fault of, you know, higher up above, and we're not going to get into that because that's even more controversial. But, you know, there is definitely a need to evolve. There's definitely a need to improve and try and keep with the technologies. But you're absolutely right, they do move very quickly, but it needs to speed up, because unfortunately there is a risk otherwise this market's going to move forward and there will be less of a need. I don't think that's going to be the case, but there needs to be some serious and very rapid change, I think, in that market.
We'll just bring in Steve very, very quickly before going to Josh, just to wrap this question up, and then we'll get our next question from the audience. Steve.
Yeah, I was sat on a train with a head of a school, like one of the leading schools in the country, and we're having a conversation. He said, "What do you do now with students that are trying to be the next thing? What do you teach them? How do you do it?" And he said, the difficulty is that we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know what's going to be next. He said, the best thing we can do is give them the flexibility to then react to what's happening next. And that's maybe where university comes, is to give them the skills to go, right, okay, if you want to go down a path or a vertical that you want to chase after, these are the things you'll need to do it in a flexible way rather than being very linear. And I think that's the only way that you're going to do it, because it's moving too quickly. You know, even everybody on this panel, yeah, and I'm pretty sure I speak for everybody, we find it difficult to keep up to speed with everything that's going
There's
on.
a lot of people nodding, just to reassure you.
You know?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Because literally, I don't know, 5 different new things dropped last week that are all massively groundbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, and you just go, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely. It's keeping
What's
lot of
happening
YouTubers
now?
very busy.
And it's great. And, you know, and every day literally is a school day, which is great, but it's quite stressful to keep on top of all the time.
Very quickly, just to get Josh in, and then we'll take a question, next question from the audience.
Yeah, bringing the employer's perspective from that. So the local skills improvement plans that we heard about earlier from Devon, Somerset, and also the one from Cornwall. One of the main things that came up, so there's large interviews with and questionnaires from lots of business owners, was that the people not having what's called the soft skills, which is ironic because actually they're really hard. So those human skills, they called them something, I can't remember, power skills, which is ridiculous, but the human skills is the biggest challenge that lots and lots of employers are facing when recruiting people out of education. So yeah, don't have it as the policy for the new policy for the university, but dialing up, again, same phrase, dialing up the human skills and confidence in their own abilities is really important.
Thank you. Let's get the Matt with his microphone out again. Okay, into the audience you go. A bit like Challenge Anakin, if you can remember that. Here we go. What's your name, sir? And give us your question.
I'm Stuart Davis. I'm the AI manager at Positive Purchasing. And I've noticed that recently there's a lot of CEOs, heads of companies that are really excited about adopting AI. But there's also a lot of people out there that are a bit unsure. Maybe they've got concerns about data security. Maybe they don't want to adopt tools that are going to affect the interpersonal relationships within their company. How do you convince those people that AI adoption is necessary and perhaps even ethical?
Oh, the E words come in.
Who would like that?
Well done for dropping the E word, ethical.
Attempt to start that. I mean, it's hard and it depends. So that, I don't know if that helps. Yeah, more buzzwords, but what we're finding we want to move people from is cautious and curious, so dipping the toe in, to being more confident and competent. So that's quite a journey. The question of how is hard and would depend on situations, but often it's change management processes, so finding quick wins, finding solutions or exploring solutions to particular challenges, or almost personal challenges as well as business challenges. And I think we had the conversation earlier around bringing the team with you. So rather than doing AI and doing change at people, you need to bring the people with you in order for it to have much more of an impact. That's my starter. I don't think I've solved it for you, but that's a starter.
Would anybody like to add to that answer? Here we go.
Yeah, it is everything about bringing the people along with you. You know, and upskilling them so they understand what's going on. The ethical element is always tricky, and you're always going to have a challenge when you're trying to bring something in if people are resistant. You know, but it's a bit like the steam engine conversation. Stuff will move, and there is no choice in that. But if you give them the opportunity to skill up or to remove really dull stuff from their lives, people will snap your hand off, actually, generally. And the other people, maybe they aren't the right people to have in your business, because unfortunately, if they don't want to move or they only want to do the really dull stuff, then that's a really tricky situation to be in.
Okay, Lindsay.
I'm not even going to try and attempt the full ethical, but I am going to say a little bit on it. And it's not going to be controversial, don't worry. So on the ethical thing, I think it's also worth noting, you mentioned about CEOs, that it's also about supporting people by putting some standards into place and some policies. You know, people like guidance and rules. So if there's the opportunity when you have CEOs that are looking to take their team on a journey, and I single that out, you know, it's about giving them that confidence by putting boundaries, and maybe not boundaries, that's probably the wrong word, but actually giving them some policies to work to as well, so that they feel confident about where they can go, what is ethical and what's widely acceptable within that business.
Fantastic. I think we've got time to take one more question from the audience before we continue the debate in the bar. But before we do that, Sam wants to come in. So Sam, very quickly. So I'm just doing that to make sure you move. That's
No,
get your steps in. Yes, Sam.
another shift. Can I quickly just touch on the university question?
Yes, of course you can.
In my opinion, and it is very controversial, I think universities are one of the best and most outdated business models in the world. I have no idea how they make that much money but lose it all at the same time.
You haven't seen my bank account there.
I think universities are outdated extremely. AI can be one of the best teachers, but that human connection, like some of the best lessons I've learned are from the knowledge that I'm being taught, but it's actually that personal connection. That's not going anywhere. The thing that is going anywhere is that framework of lessons, like we're going to warm up with that shouldn't be there. Exactly. It's outdated, and £50,000 for a 3-year course is absolutely ridiculous, and it will die if it stays like that. It 100% will. I can spin up a course for £500 and learn 6 months worth of content, but I need that personal connection where it's like, oh, I can talk to you about these things and you know what you're talking about, but you're comfortable enough to be like, here's some frameworks that we can work to together and get the answer, and it's not draining my bank account. So
that is an interesting conversation that will no doubt continue after in the bar, and Lindsay's going to keep score. Let's send Matt back out for one final question.
One final
from you.
question from Christina, I think.
I'm really interested, based off the back of this conversation that sparked the question, is the future of roles and the value of roles and how we determine salaries based on knowledge and education and coming out of that. I think that's really interesting now, being an employer myself, and also how do I put a job role out and how do I determine the value? If you take a coder, for example, who we all know are notoriously expensive to do what they do and the time that it takes, and if we're saying they're no longer needed anymore in the future, so sort of short-term future, then how do we value a AI user or somebody that's sort of doing that job differently? How can we put a cost and a value to something like that when it's coming out so fast?
Now, Sam definitely wants to jump in here because,
So in our company, we don't actually we hire off people that have those AI skills that are using AI. That's what we really look for. But it's not so much about AI taking jobs anymore. It allows you to scale vertically. Like, you don't need to spend 6 months coding anymore. That doesn't mean, oh my God, like, what am I going to do for 5.5 months now? You can just take on more people and you can deliver more value quicker. That's what we look for. It's not trying to get rid of that.
From my point of view, it's the future of job description and putting a salary against that. The value of a coder, because they've spent 10 years at university or whatever, getting the output, the education and knowledge, to then go, they sit in that salary bracket. How do they create, because I feel like there's going to be loads of new salary brackets, and from the value and the quick education, what perhaps they didn't go to university. So how do you determine whether they're employable if they haven't got a math, English, science degree?
and just for the purposes of the recording, so Christina wants to add to that with regards to how do you evaluate the purpose and requirements and assign that to a job description, salary, roadmap for career, that all-encompassing.
You have to go into a job interview with a certain level of degree and education, and what we're saying can really challenge it with that now.
Yeah.
And then it's going into a role of going, right, you're going into a £50,000 role or a £70,000 role, but how do we determine the value of that if AI is facilitating a lot of that outcome?
Determining the value of the role. Can you add to that?
Yeah, so we're a very new company, so we might do things slightly differently, but we judge the person on the value they bring in. And if AI adds to your value, we will pay you for that. We're very big in bonuses and in our company as well, like KPIs. We don't care where you are. Like, if you're the cleaner and you clean those floors real good, you should get a piece of that because you help with that environment. And that goes all the way up to the top. Like, the CEO gets bonuses, I get bonuses, but it's all based off that value add. And AI only adds value, doesn't take it away. So in terms of that salary, if someone's bringing in an X amount of years, like, just because they're using AI, we're not going to penalize for you. That for that might even be the opposite. Like, we might even go, we want to encourage that. Here's more.
Okay, one very, very quick addition to that. I'm going to pass it to Lindsay because this is your thing.
No pressure.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting question. I think you're right when you said this is probably a future question, because I don't think we're quite there yet. But I think what I'm finding with the roles that are coming in, and they are starting to come in, those AI engineers, machine learning engineers, is that we're almost getting them come to us and going, can you tell us what we should be paying? Because we're not quite sure. And it's that education piece. But what I would say to you is we're going to see rapid scale in those salaries. So people that I have put in as trainees, as, you know, starting out entry AI engineers, do not need a degree, do not need years of experience, because it's not new, but the learning on that side recently and where the roles are going is quite new. So people aren't going to have 15, 20 years. So I think the answer is that there's a little bit of we don't know right now to that question, and that's okay. We're on a learning journey in a lot of this, but I think the salaries are rapidly going to scale. They already are. Someone who's in Google, dare I say that this is actually false information, because the people that were engineering the LLM in Google, they have actually now let go because the LLM has got so far, large language model for those that don't know. Those that were engineering it have been made redundant because they are no longer needed because the LLM has got ahead of them. So, there were big salaries in those companies and now those people don't exist. But I think we're on a journey with that. I think the salaries are going to rapidly scale, but I think it depends on how much AI is involved, how technical that AI is, or is it just a role that's been improved with AI, which arguably all roles are. So I think we're on a journey with that. So I don't know whether that answers the question, but it's kind of we're going to have to see, I think, is the answer.
We are definitely all on a journey. So let's close off the panel. I'd like to quickly pass the microphone just down to finish the podcast recording and ask you one by one just to say, what are you most excited about when it comes to AI for the future? And what quick soundbite of advice would you give to somebody who's perhaps a little bit more apprehensive about the future and AI? Paul?
Okay, I'll answer the second one first. I'd say lean into it. I'd say have fun with it. People sometimes they're apprehensive about many, many things. I think with AI, be careful what you put in. Don't expose all your personal details to it. I'd be a little careful about the information you share in it in terms of where it's going to go. But personally, have fun with it. There's so many amazing things you can do with AI. There's so many different things you can do. Lean into it. Don't lean away from it. Lean into it and have fun with it. In terms of the great things that are going on at the minute, I'm really fascinated to see where the kind of the mind reading AI stuff goes. Yeah, I think that stuff will be really interesting in terms of the brain waves and how they're going to try and interpret kind of thought patterns into text. Really interesting where that goes. I mean, I can see it I was looking at it 3 years ago where they were talking about being 40% accurate, and the report that came out, I think around about 3 months ago, they'd narrowed that down. Now it's still wildly inaccurate, but it's getting better. I'm really interested about where that goes, just that in terms of that human AI interfaces and what comes out of it. I think that's really interesting in terms of for health tech, but also just society as a whole. Could be kind of completely transformative.
Fantastic. My takeaway there, don't expose yourself. Steve?
I suppose excited because it's just transforming the way that we operate as businesses, and it should make everybody a better kind of have better roles in their businesses. And I kind of follow on Sam's the way that he's looking at the way his employees are paid. Is that it should be really on the output and the provision that you have, because that should always been the case, but it has never been the case. This is the time to change that. We should pay people based on what they do and provide, rather than what they are perceived to do. And that should go all the way up to the top. And I think that's kind of an exciting thing to watch, because that will be really interesting to see how that works. But there'll be a lot of people at the top who will stop that happening.
Of course.
There'll be a lot. But as far as things, just to if anybody's a bit nervous, yeah, just try it. And there's loads of different areas. There's loads of AI inside different applications you might use, and sites and stuff that you can interact with if you're really not comfortable. Be aware of the free tools and don't do some money of those. Pick one and pay for it, and it's not that much a month, but it's worth it just to get the extra features, and also to know that you're not feeding some strange animal somewhere.
Good advice and good words of encouragement. I think, don't feed any strange animals. Lovely. Lindsay?
Well, I was going to go down the same route in terms of the salaries and things. So actually, that's really interesting, and I agree with you. For me, I think my piece of advice first, I guess, to lead you on to another cliche for you, would be to have a play. I think, there's a world of resources for free, and that, we can learn from that. But also there's lots of people that are really interested in it, are at different stages on the journey. I've used that cliche word again. But, I think it's important to ask people, I'm learning this, I've learnt this. What can we take from this? Do you know how I can add to my learning? And I think it's about talking and communicating, and that's that human element again, which is so important. And in terms of what am I excited about, it would absolutely be how it's going to change the market, because it is going to change the market. And we haven't even touched on that topic because it is a massive one. But I'm really excited to see how's it going to blend our work lives with our personal lives. How are we going to start using it in our personal lives? Because I think 5 years' time, we're probably going to rely on it every single day in our personal life as well as our business life. That's interesting.
Thank you for giving us 2 more buzzwords there. And I'm actually quite surprised nobody's used the word agile yet. Jake.
Go on.
Well, I think one of the things that really excites me about AI is the agility that it brings. To be a bit more technical, it's specifically diffusion models and the inverse latent spatial representation of information that we can get with the
say that.
ones.
Yeah.
Put simply, the way that AI models are increasing and are evolving, it's not just a case of, it's predicting the next word that you're going to say and it might sound nice. Instead, it's creating a contextual understanding of both visually what it's seeing, but also anything that you're typing into it. And in terms of going forward, that is evolving very quickly. If we think as humans, how do we operate with that little internal voice telling us what we should and what we shouldn't do, our own reasoning model, these are things and features that are starting to be embedded into how AI models are created. So the best way to get ahead, the best way to keep up with it is have that curiosity, have that amusement and wonder of how is this working, have that troubleshooting thought of how can you tackle and use this, because it's not a calculator. It doesn't just tell you what 3 + 5 is. Instead, it can help you expand what you're capable of thinking about, both from a creative and an academic, writing, publishing, all manner of things.
Good mathematics question there. Thank you for that. Yeah, Josh.
8 is the answer.
Good.
Just 3 + 5. I don't know.
Did you carry the one? I did.
I carried the one, yeah. And remembered the number I first thought of, so that's cool. So the thing I'm excited about, so personally and actually for people I've been working with in business, is that there's that unbridled joy of it doing the thing for you without you having to fight the blank page. Like all I can think of at the moment is a job description. So I'm going to have to do some job descriptions, and it's boring, and everyone knows how you do a job description. You get the old one, change the date, don't change anything else. Brilliant. And so not doing that and start and getting tools like ChatGPT to start that work for you is brilliant. And when you introduce people to tools like that and how excited they get because they can immediately see the impact it'll have on their day-to-day work is cool. So I like that joy that comes with it. My one thing I would say for us, it's business leaders. We know that we call it shadow AI. So the staff are all using AI at the moment in your business, and as a leader, you probably don't know that they're doing that. It's a good thing because it shows they're interested, they're engaged, they want to develop their careers. But it's quite risky. So the request to business leaders is please get strategic around how AI is working in your business.
And last but not least, and please try not to upset anyone again, Sam.
Mine's slightly different. I'm really looking forward to AI and domesticated robots. And what I mean by that is, well, they plan to come at the end of the year. Well, since Tesla and stuff, we won't talk about them, but that might not happen. Kind of seeing that in people's kitchens and people's lives, and the reason I'm really excited for
And
that
cats sit on them, don't they?
exactly. Because the
Absolutely.
reason I'm looking forward to that is because it's going to be the first materialistic thing that we can touch. So we see a lot of digital things here, like OpenAI and ChatGPT, and we've seen the robotic dog walking around. Everyone's really excited about that. They think, wow, like this is Marty McFly stuff. But what happens when your neighbor has one? and then your neighbors has one, and suddenly they're integrated into real life. I feel like that's going to be the clicking point for the general public, because we've talked a lot about AI in business. That'll be the first time the general public go, oh, AI is actually integrated in my everyday life. That's what I'm looking forward to, and the outcome of that, positive or negative. Jake stole mine. I'm going to point the finger. You stole mine. Stay curious. That could also be a different soundbite, but stay curious for AI. Just learn, want to learn, try to learn, and again, fail, and come back and try again. That's mine.
Excellent. Well, that has been our Life in AI live podcast discussion. Please put your hands together for our panelists. And give yourselves a round of applause for listening. Thank you.